Hello everyone. I wanted to do a recording to talk about motherboards and then slightly mention Big Navi towards the end as it relates to this. Okay, to start it off, let's just go over the fact that motherboard design hasn't really changed all that much in the last couple of years. If you can see the cursor on my screen, we're just going to go over those parts. So usually motherboards have between 4 and 6 SATA port slots, which are these right here. That's where you plug in your hard drive. You have your 4 RAM channels. Then you have your 2 M2s. This is where your M2 SSDs go. And then you have your PCI Express X16 slots, these two right here. PCI Express X16 is where your video card goes. You'll notice that the main one is usually encased in metal, at least these days. So that's what motherboards have looked like for the last couple of years. One thing that has sort of changed is I've noticed Gigabyte builds the I/O shields into the motherboard, which is actually kind of a nice feature, but that seems to be unique to Gigabyte. But I do wish that feature is more common. But moving on to what I think could be done to change it, based on a space perspective. I'm not an engineer and I don't design motherboards, so all I can do is look at this from a space perspective in terms of can I remove this and add this type of thing. But I think in order to determine what should be removed, you must first create 3 categories for the motherboards. That would be gaming, workstation, and then finally high-end or server. High-end being, 8K video rendering and things like that. So once you figured out how to divide them into different categories, then you can proceed to figure out what should be removed. So I'm going to focus on gaming, and I'm going to use a B550M Aorus Elite for this because it's one of the motherboards I recently showed in my videos and I build with. But in this particular instance, I think that 1 M2, 3 SATAs, and this PCI X16 at the very bottom should be removed. This will go into a discussion with Big Navi in a moment, but I'll explain my reasonings with this other stuff. It's because most gamers will never use more than 1 M2 or maybe 1 hard drive at any given point in time. CD, DVDs have kind of gone out the window over the last couple of years, so there's really not a need to be building a computer that can fit that. So for that reason, you can focus on USB ports, that kind of stuff. If you're going to try to download an operating system or game, I really do think games should have moved to USB, but I've already talked about that. So yeah, the only reason that I think this one SATA should stick around is because games are getting exponentially larger in file size, at least in comparison to priors. It will come to a point where it's going to be much harder to maintain a big capacity for low cost. For that reason, software does exist that allows you to turn your M2 SSD into a cache for the hard drive. This was something previously done by technology known as solid-state hybrid drives, or SSHDs for short. SSHDs just had a solid-state memory built into it that allowed it to cache files there. So it's doing the same thing but on a larger scale, and instead of it being all internal, it's now all spread out between internal and the software side of things. You do need to download software on your computer to utilize most of the software out there that does turn your SSD into a cache. But that will likely be the best option going forward, is using that system so that you can buy a really high capacity hard drive for low cost and then just chunk in a low cost SSD for the cache purposes. So yeah, I would just leave 1 and 1 for that reason. As far as the PCI Express X16, that involves a discussion with Big Navi, so we'll just go ahead and get right into that. NVIDIA did announce that they removed SLI from the 3070 and 3080. SLI is only available on 3090. SLI is what allows multiple NVIDIA cards to communicate with each other in a system. AMD's equivalent is Crossfire. I really hope that Navi does not feature Crossfire. If it's made for gaming, then it should not have Crossfire. If it's for workstation or higher-end applications, then fine, Crossfire away. That's what NVIDIA is doing, and it's honestly the smartest thing I've seen in a couple years. Crossfire SLI for gaming is a thing of the past. I do not recall of any games in recent times that support either. It's extra time on the devs to put that in, and honestly, it's not worth it because there's just not that many people doing Crossfire SLI. So the motherboard should follow the market, and that if they're going away from SLI and Crossfire, then they should do the same to a certain degree, obviously. I mean, you'll still need it for workstation or high-end, but for gaming, you don't need it. So get rid of that X16 slot. Yeah, so the only thing I can really say as a last thing on this matter is really an optional thing in relation to the motherboard. The audio chipsets in a motherboard, while they're good and all, I think that you could free up space on the motherboard if you were just to use a DAC. That's also known as a digital audio converter. What a digital audio converter is it's a USB device that acts kind of like an external sound card, depending on what you're talking about, because some models do act like that, some others don't. But either way, it's supposed to take a 3.5mm audio source and turn it into USB. So I think that motherboards, or at least DACs, should be working together, or at least DACs should be more common. My reasoning for that is not just for the space on the motherboard, but also because of drivers. If we do not get a new gaming operating system in a couple years, we will have to continue dealing with Windows updates screwing over our drivers. So DACs, depending which model, don't require drivers. They're a USB plug-and-play device, though some features like the ones on this one that's on my screen do require software. I don't see those features as necessary, so I would just avoid the software altogether, but the point is that USB will avoid those aggravating driver mess-ups because of Windows Update. But again, that is assuming that we don't get a new operating system. So yeah. I'll finish it off by talking about the two DAC models that I would say are fine to use. And you'll have to read reviews to see which one is best suited for you, but the Soundblaster Gsx is one of the two that is out there and still purchasable. The other one is the Sennheiser Gsx 1000. The Gsx 1000, unlike the G6, has everything built into it, so it doesn't need software, and you can control the entire thing from the interface that's on the device itself, whereas the G6 needs software to do some of its functions. But again, I don't see those functions as important because you can do most of what you need to on the audio end anyways through the buttons that you see on the left and right sides of it. But that's really all I have. Thanks for listening.